When goods that can be measured or weighed are purchased, the merchant is expected to measure liberally, that is to add at least one additional unit, and he usually does so. It must be taken into account that a mistake is more likely in measuring goods than in counting money, but the important feature is that the buyer has the power to enforce an interpretation of this possibility in his own favor even though the chances of advantage or disadvantage are equal for both parties. It is significant that the advantage is given to the buyer even when the other party is also dealing in money. The customer expects the banker, the insured expects the insurance company in case of a claim, to deal fairly, that is to give a little more, even if only in a formal way, than what is enforceable by law. The bank and the insurance company also trade only in money, but the customer for his part does not think of being fair or liberal, he only offers what has been agreed upon beforehand. The sums of money offered on each side have in fact quite a different significance. For the banker and the insurance company, the money with which they operate is simply a commodity that they can use only in this particular way. For the customer, it is money in the sense with which we are here concerned, namely a value that he can, but need not necessarily, use for stock exchange business or insurance. The freedom to use the money for diverse purposes gives the customer an advantage which is compensated by the fairness of the other party. Where a supplement is given by the owner of money, as in tipping waiters and taxi drivers, this merely expresses the social superiority of the giver, which is the presupposition of tipping. Like all other monetary phenomena, these are not occurrences isolated from the rest of human life. They display in a particularly clear and obvious manner a fundamental characteristic of life, namely that in every relationship the individual who has less interest in the substance of the relationship is at an advantage. This may appear paradoxical, since the more intense the desire to possess something or to establish a relationship, the more intense and passionate is the enjoyment of it. It is indeed the anticipated enjoyment that determines the strength of our desire. Yet it is just this situation that gives an advantage to the less interested party, for it is in the nature of things that the one who benefits less should be compensated by some concessions from the other party. This is apparent even in the most refined and intimate relations. In every love relationship, the one who is less involved has an advantage, because the other renounces from the very beginning any exploitation of the relationship, is more ready to make sacrifices, and offers a greater measure of devotion in exchange for the greater satisfaction that he derives. Equity is thus established. Since the degree of desire corresponds with the degree of enjoyment, it is right that the relationship should provide the individual who is less involved with a special gain, which he is able to exact, because he is more hesitant, more reserved, and more ready to make conditions. Thus the profit of the one who gives money is not altogether unfair, since he is usually less interested in the commodity, money transaction. An agreement between the two parties is brought about by the one who is more interested in the transaction giving to the other a gain over and above the objective equivalence of the exchange values. It should also be borne in mind that the owner of money has this advantage not because he possesses money, but because he is prepared to part with it. The profit that accrues to money because it is detached from any particular content or process of the economy is also shown in other ways, and particularly in the fact that owners of money usually profit from violent and ruinous economic upheavals, often to an extraordinary extent. However, many bankruptcies and business failures result from price slumps or from commodity market booms. Experience has shown that the big bankers usually make a steady profit out of these dangers that confront sellers and buyers, creditors and debtors. The services of money, as the neutral tool of economic processes, have to be paid for regardless of the direction or pace of these processes. Of course, money has to pay something for this freedom. The uncommitted nature of money means that contradictory demands are made upon the dispenser of money from different sides, and that he excites the suspicion of betrayal more easily than does the individual who deals in specific commodities. In early modern times, when the great financial powers, the Fuggers, the Welsers, the Florentine and Genoan bankers, entered the political arena, particularly during the great struggle between the Habsburgs and the French monarchy for European hegemony, they were regarded with permanent mistrust by all parties, including those to whom they had lent vast sums of money. One never could be sure of the financiers, whose money transactions did not commit them beyond the present moment, and even the enemy against whom they had lent their financial support did not regard this as an obstacle to approaching them himself with requests and propositions. Money has the very positive quality that is designated by the negative concept of lack of character. The individual whom we regard as a weak character is not directed by the inner worth of persons, things, or thoughts, but by the external pressure that is brought to bear upon him. The fact that money is detached from all specific contents and exists only as a quantity earns for money, and for those people who are only interested in money, the quality of characterlessness. This is the almost logically necessary reverse side of the advantages of finance and of the overvaluation of money in relation to qualitative values. The superiority of money is expressed first in the fact that the seller is more interested and eager than the buyer. A very significant feature of our whole attitude towards objects is involved here, namely, when two opposing classes of values are considered as a whole, the first class may be distinctly superior to the second, while the individual objects or representatives of the second group may be superior to those of the first. Faced with a choice between the totality of material goods and the totality of ideal goods, we should probably be obliged to choose the first, because to renounce it would be to negate life, including all its ideal contents, but on the other hand, we might not hesitate to give up any single material good in exchange for an ideal good. In our relations with other people we do not question that one relationship is much more valuable and indispensable than another, when viewed as a whole, but on particular occasions and in particular aspects the less valuable relationship may be more enjoyable and attractive. This is how matters stand in the relation between money and concrete objects of value. A choice between the objects as a whole and money as a whole would immediately reveal the intrinsic valuelessness of the latter, which provides us only with means, not with an end. Yet when a given sum of money is set against a given quantity of commodities, the exchange of the latter for the former is usually demanded much more strongly than vice versa. This relationship exists not only between commodities and money in general, but also between money and particular categories of commodities. A single pin is almost worthless, but pins in general are almost indispensable and worth their weight in gold.